5 minutes, please. Okay, we discussed on these topics regarding our relations with peers, and the key points were how to optimize the relationships with peers in times of constant changes, what are the common challenges across different markets. Nowadays, there is a lot of political instability in many countries in Europe. Then evidence, I can read who wrote this.
It's me.
Yeah.
Evidence requirement.
Evidence requirement and value-benefit understanding. There's the main challenges. And ideas and solutions were unmet need to the common goal. To try to find common interest and to sort out unmet need. And key takeaways are to be aware of political and social movements. In any time, to be aware of what's going on in the country, in the market, in the budget. Awareness of all the pharma companies about the situation in the country, different markets, of course, and how to move on the right way to succeed. The second one was how to approach the payers in spite of the lack of plans, agendas, protocols, and in times of low budgets. The main challenge is essential interest are opposites, save money versus make money. What to sort it out with ideas and solutions, insisting on introductions of new life-saving drugs with real-world data. And by the end of the day, the pair, there is one of the proposal, how many deaths have we lost for how long? That according to their inactivity and pairs used to say, we don't have money, just wait, there is not time for introduction of a new drug. And during that time, you have many life lost, unfortunately. The third one is how to rethink and optimize pair approach strategies. The main challenge is, of course, rigid mindset, because the people from bureaucracy, they are very stubborn. They think how to save the money, not how to offer quality health care to the people. And the idea is peer education via trade associations. Also, we have in many countries, we have several meetings during the year with in the Chamber of Commerce, Department for Pharmaceuticals, with stakeholders and other payers from Ministry of Health, Health Insurance Fund, Drug Agency, and etc. And congresses and events, that they could be aware of new health technologies, new drugs, safety profile of the drugs, efficacy of the drugs, and some clinical studies that they are proven in favor of new drugs that can be introduced to reimbursement list. And in the end, you have to convince them of a common interest, that we are together working on the common interest in the favor, not only in the favor of industry, in the favor of politicians. We also all are in that game in the favor of the people, of the health of nation. How to find the better ways to persuade key opinion leaders of the benefit of specific products. The main challenge is lack of information about new molecules, and the reputation of pharma industry worsened. So there is in the last few years a narrative that pharma industry is mafia, that everything we have extra profit, and right now the old very necessary molecules, very old drugs, which are still effective in therapy, are right now cheaper than Orbit bubblegums, which is packaged for 2 days, and the package of the drug is for 1 month therapy. So they are depressed the price all over the time, and nowadays we have the prices of the old molecules. They are cheaper than 20 years ago. And when you calculate inflation and other data of how to say it's economical term. Inflation and index of price, index of price, rising of the price. It's in the statistics, in economic statistics. Index, yeah, price, yeah. And what is one of the main idea is to aware them about safety profile of drugs. What is very interesting, because the special innovative drugs are mostly hepatotoxic and very aggressive, and with the clinical studies we have to prove that that safety profile is very acceptable for the new drug. And also the takeaways from this topic is more informations and educations for stakeholders. How to prepare the optimal price negotiation strategy to maximize our changes in the context of managed entry agreements, how to enter with very expensive drugs. The main challenges, broad indications and budget impact. It's obviously that it's a huge budget impact for any country and any payer. And ideas and solution is to enter to the list using managed entry agreements. There is two main models of managed entry agreements. The first one is financial rebate, discount. The other one is to natural rebate, that you are giving a certain amount of packaging free of charge. And in both cases, the official listed price will remain the same, and agreement is confidential, and nobody knows what is the real selling price of this drug. And according to international reference pricing, this model does not interfere with price changes to other countries that they are referred to reference countries. And one of the idea is manage entry agreement to implement them and to tailor the approaches. I cannot read this. Do you know who wrote this? It's CBA.
OBA, outcomes-based agreements and pay for performance. You already said.
Aha.
Yeah.
Okay. There is some also some, let's say, some kind of managed entry agreements based on performance basis, but in very few countries they are implementing, and by the end of the day, they find out they cannot find the real data, and they cannot estimate performance of this drug, because they have, if that we are paying only the drug for the patients, that they have appropriate effect. In the case that this drug doesn't work, we will not pay for this patient. It will be free of charge, of course, and this patient will be shifted to the other therapy, similar therapy. And key takeaway is how to succeed with managed entry agreements, to be ready to prepare up to 3 different business cases models to avoid hopeless situations, because negotiations can last very, very long, even 2-3 years, and after any round of discussion with the pairs, you have to be prepared for plan B and even a plan C before we find common interest and sign this managed entry agreement. Thank you. Number 2 is number 5.
Yeah, what am I doing? Up on stage?
You can also put it on stage.
Thanks a lot. I only wanted to make a comment here, a very nice discussion. So I would like to pressure test a few things here. One is, pharma is not mafia. I think this is, I know what you mean, but talking Novartis head on, have been 15 years in this market access environment. I think there is a lot of respect also on the health authority side. Is it in GBA or IFA or HAS, doesn't matter. Mafia is a kind of criminal organization, which we are not. Maybe we are greedy, or we are seen as greedy. Maybe we are seen not to have the right evidence package, but yeah. Just, I would not like for a pharma industry to have this kind of connotation. Mm-hmm.
There is this kind of press, I have seen a few times, the press and publicity that kind of portrays us as mafias. I think that was the point here. It's, we don't believe that, but and also it's increasingly also some physicians think that we have so much, especially when it comes to high-priced innovative drugs. So I mean, that, of course we are not.
Of course we are not. Yeah. But I mean, I have never heard about, I don't know if you, Matthias, heard about this wording, but I've never heard about that. Mm-hmm. We launched Zolgensma at that point of time, €2 million drug. There was a lot of emotional discussion around that from patients, from parents of patients, from health authorities, accusation lottery, who is getting the drug because there was not enough drug and things like that. But it was never going into this kind of criminal area. It's so I think you want to express something different, but if I would be now a patient and I hear, this, I just make it up here, of course, this is not the goal, but this conference, we found out that we have to do something in our communication strategy because we are seen as mafia. I would not be happy just leaving the room as a pharma industry. If there is one or other person saying that, I don't know. But even in Bucharest or in Budapest, I didn't hear about these things. So
I think
Can you give you example of,
I just wanted to make this point.
Belgium? Yeah.
Mhm.
I have heard from, indirectly from my medical science liaison colleagues in the film.
That a physician said this.
Not like the word mafia, but they use this word financial toxicity. So not only do you have safety profile, but you have financial toxicity to address. And these are not KOLs.
Mhm.
These are
But
physicians.
I think that's a completely valid and fair
Exactly.
criticism.
I don't think that's.
I think Herbert's comment is valid. So it's about, are we talking about corporate social responsibility, the role of a company to be ethical? I mean, and those are some key principles. Of course, it's very important for a company to uphold this the same time as you recognize that it's a profit-seeking entity. But it's not a profit-seeking entity to the point of deliberately breaking the law and circumventing the rules. So I kind of really understand. I haven't heard this term either, mafia. I have been yelled at during presentations. I have been called a lot of things. I have been accused of being greedy, being only concerned about profits. But I've never heard that either. And I think it's important, right, to also recognize that some of those criticisms can be valid. So financial toxicity
I
is.
don't agree also with that, actually.
Yeah.
Financial toxicity wording, but this is the word that's been used. And regularly in the press in Belgium, if you follow the Belgian news media, there's often this press that confidential discount and these companies are hiding from the public. Actually, confidential discounts give them the drugs at lower price, right? That's the entire.
Which I'm fine to
objective.
deal with.
Yeah, but
But it's
portrayed
something
in
totally
a-
different than.
No, but
different.
it's always portrayed in a different way. So I think what Herbal is saying is maybe not like, not the word itself, but that's the reputation, and we see in the payer negotiation this repulsiveness because they think we are money-making,
Yeah.
money-oriented people, and we are just there to take over all their budget.
Yeah.
That's how they treat us. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I think that was the feeling here, right? That like
Yes,
it's
sure.
over
So
here.
when I listen to you guys, then I think what your concern is that mafia means something corruptive, right?
Exactly.
I think we are all on the same page. We are not corrupt.
Yeah.
And nobody think we are corruptive, I think.
We are fully compliant, but we are profit oriented, and you can't deny because we are all on the stock market. But I think that's what you triggered, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's the wording and how to express that. And we have done Novartis. Now I can only talk for Novartis, of course, here. We have done one of the first outcome-based agreements with Xolair in the Netherlands, for example, which was very successful. Was the first time we did one of the first price-volume agreements in Italy to recognize the budget impact and the societal interest to only pay for outcomes, for example. And we are also profit-oriented. Yes, we are in the stock market, definitely. But I would say the majority of the people in the pharma industry and the pharma companies, they are purpose-driven. We love to work in this environment, and we should not let it slip in the way, okay, we accept that they think we are financially toxic. That's maybe not criminal and corruptive, what we said here. Still, I want to argue, how much risk we take and things like that.
This is the impression. In the film, it's in the big press, whatever it comes, if you go into the film, most of many European countries, players are not perceiving us as good guys.
Yeah.
This is the impression.
We can discuss this lengthy because I was the last 15 years in Market Access Europe. I was responsible for that in launching 25 products in many different indications. And my overall experience, tough. Of course, we know that it's not easy to finance these innovative drugs, Luxturna, Zolgensma, CAR-T, whatever we talk about, but somehow fair and respectful. I was never in front of IFA or AJAS or GBA in an arbitration board or SIN where I got accused because you are pharma industry, we don't want to talk to you because you're only thinking about profit. No, they even accept in these meetings that we try to optimize our financial benefit from this innovation, they just don't have enough money and and sometimes not the evidence that they wish to pay for that. And I know it's a lengthy discussion, but
Yeah, I think I don't have direct always experience, but some direct, some indirect.
Mhm.
In
Okay.
JCA sense, my impression is that I have heard from people, they say that
Yeah.
along with GBA, we are thinking that you could create better trials, and you are not making it. So it's all your fault if you don't get reimbursement.
I think that no one can deny the mistrust or which exists, or this mischaracterization. And I work for a trade association, and we represent 160 member companies, a lot of different companies. I think a lot of these companies have been to court, some people haven't been in the media, etc. I think overall the conception is of the industry as one single thing. And we spend a lot of time explaining to members of the European Parliament, politicians, other stakeholders, etc., what it is that the pharmaceutical industry is actually doing, how it is operating, etc. And let me tell you, before I stepped into this role, I had no idea how it worked. And it's very easy to buy into these ideas when you don't really understand it or you don't have to deal with it. You could just as easily say, if you are a payer, what you're doing is unethical, because you have to make the tough decisions. If you're on the wrong end of that decision, you might just as likely to hold a payer responsible for it, or an HTA body for it, or a clinician that refuses to prescribe a certain medicine. But in many cases, it doesn't, because it's so easy. It's like you have a target drawn on you because you're a profit-seeking entity in all of this. That's my reflection, at least. But I don't want to bog down into this. Why don't we? Because we are, 2, 4, 6 people listening, plus people in the back. So why don't we summarize a bit, but come in, please. So we'll summarize, because I don't think you have been leading your own discussions. Maybe you are also interested to weigh in on the topics. Why don't we do like a final discussion as well with everyone? What do you think, Herbert? Our discussion was about Joint Clinical Assessment, or EU-HTA, which I think everyone is quite familiar with. And we tackled 3 main questions. I think we spent most of the time on the first 2 questions, not so much on the final one. So the first one was dealing with how are you, as a company, navigating this uncertainty? Of course, it's a completely new procedure, so by default, there will be uncertainty. So here, why don't you come with some of the first reflection about how you deal with uncertainty?
Yeah. No, thanks a lot. And first of all, I'm no longer Novartis. I retired from Novartis, only to make that sure. I'm now working for Pharma, for a consulting company, but still 35 years in pharma is a pharma brain and will not change. I have to learn on many things, also consulting here. What we spoke about is how to navigate around this uncertainty, and it's new. And one of the comments that we heard was very nice, was know the guidance. So really read through it, understand the details. It's like an introduction of AMNOG procedure in 2011, which was a big surprise for pharma industry. We were not involved at all in that, but and it was a shock. And how to manage this new law in Germany from free pricing, true free pricing, into this very restricted things. And it's the same here, to know about the guidance. Much of it is influenced by France and by Germany, the 2 big countries, how the structure is, how the rules are. But there are some very important differences which you should know when you prepare for that. And of course, we are now in the first 9 assessments. 9 products have been submitted to the coordination group, and assessors, co-assessors have been allocated to them. Every company will have maybe 1 learning product, but there are we have to learn together. So industry associations are a good place because where you have several members, there's FPIA, HTA work group, they come together, there is UCORP and others, which are summarizing these kind of learnings. There's also consulting companies which are consulting a few, which are consulting maybe 3, 4, 5 companies at the same time, work with them how to prepare. They learn fastest. Even a Novartis and a Pfizer cannot learn so fast because they have only 2 products or 3 products in 2 or 3 years. And while this is moving forward, that regulation may also change. There will be some adaptations. We see already that they are listening. Of course, 2028 is the first time that feedback can be given officially and a report is requested from the European Commission, but things will be adapted. And so learn quickly together, share, try to be transparent with everything what we learn in a very compliant way, of course, with industry associations is usually the best way.
Maybe I go then, we can go back
Please,
again
yes.
to that. And I think this was very, very interesting takeaway, because when we look at our member companies as well, there is of course always that reluctance to share, but to that realization that really it is to the benefit of everyone that companies will be learning at a slower speed than everyone else just by having a single asset going through the procedure versus all of the HTA. But it's a very interesting reflection. When we look at some of the challenges, I mean, someone mentioned that smaller biotechs that are unfamiliar with the European procedures will really be at a disadvantage. That resonates a lot with us, since we represent small to mid-sized companies. We see this. Been to Boston this summer at the Bio conference, as it was HTA What. So that is, of course, quite a challenge, especially if you're a smaller company and you're one or a handful of people that's responsible for the launch. And you're not familiar with the European procedures and the requirements, puts you a bit off the back foot. Of course, it's still you have to deal with it. One uncertainty which was mentioned was around the methodological guidance. I mean, if you're able to do an RCT, it's quite clear. If you're not, then it becomes a bit more messy. If you have single arm trials relying on surrogate endpoints, relying on indirect treatment comparisons, in this case, which typically is for medicinal products, ATMPs, you have of course, the challenge that they might be seen as or rated as a higher degree of certainty, these types of evidence in the JCA report. Now, what we reflect is that one of the main challenges is to really avoid poor JCA outcomes and also to avoid poor access outcomes where there's a decision of not granting access, and that this really is in the interest of everyone. It's not just the companies, it's also HTA bodies that are involved in this procedure. And that we really need to stress the unmet medical need in these cases and to also accept uncertainty and to gather additional evidence down the line when it can be made available. Another main challenge was the PICOs. The PICO approach is really challenging. I think it comes as no surprise. Especially it was mentioned that you have to deal with off-label comparators as well that might be included for cost considerations. Also the impact of outlier comparators. So maybe there's an older, if you have an oncology product, you have an older type of chemotherapy which is used in certain countries, or maybe you have a rare disease and they have a specific type of best supportive care that's only provided in a few countries. So you have to deal with this somehow. How does that impact your PICOs? So Herbert, how do you then prepare for these various PICOs that can come in the JCA?
Yeah, I think we discussed it also with the members, I think 2-3 weeks ago in Brussels, that starting the whole exercise around 2 years before EMA submission makes a lot of sense. So 1 year is already too short, because there is one part in coming back to the PICO, which is PICO simulation, to make sure that you have the upper number of PICOs assessed, which could come based on the evidence package that you have prepared, but also a lower number of things. What we learned so far from the different organizations which have already experienced that at the moment, the consolidation of the PICOs from the assessors and co-assessors is working quite well. The worry was that we have the highest possible number or a high number of picos, but they are actually on the lower end when you do the pico simulation, what kind of pico subpopulations and comparators could come. So start early, know the regulation, do a pico simulation so that you are also prepared for the period when you get the result of the pico scoping, which is the picos that you have to respond to in the dossier. You have 100 days. And if you would start at that point of time, you're totally lost. You have no chance to do all the indirect comparison. And of course, you have to answer all the pico requests. That would mean if you don't have data, you have to explain why you don't have data for that. For example, off-label comparators could be that this is not ethical or not possible to recruit patients and things like that. Yeah, so that was a long discussion around picos and how to do it, and off-label picos was one of them. Yeah, and then, of course, when we talked about picos, we moved into the second part and the second question. What kind of data could be potentially requested in addition from the countries after the JCA process? And then we come to this delta dossiers, the so-called delta dossiers. That would mean Germany, France, Italy cannot ask for the same data again, which have been already requested in the JCA process, but they can ask for additional data if some picos which they locally request, for example, have not been part of that original assessment. Yeah, please.
Just a question. In your experience so far, anyone has asked additional data?
There is no.
Because so far there hasn't been a JCA report.
No, but the process is still going on. I know it's a confidential information, but it's...
No. So it's an excellent question because I mean this is what we have been worrying about. Is because of the way that the procedure has been set up. There is, of course, it's really up to the member states whether they want to use that report, throw it away, etc. But the first JCA report would only be ready next year in March or April or something like this. And that, yes.
But many of them have already consolidated the PICOs, so they call it PICO consolidation process. Have you ever heard that anywhere like where there is already a discussion going on at local level and they might have asked something more, or they might have any idea that there would be like need to present something more than what's included in GCA for any company? Or I'm just like trying to see that how actually in reality these member states are not being picky and personal enough and happy to...
I think it's if I understand correctly your question, then it's a very good question. In the PICO simulation, you would think, okay, these are the 15, 25 PICOs that you could expect at a maximum level. Now, if the PICO scoping is coming back and some of these PICOs disappear because the consolidation would funnel them down to 10 or whatever the number is, then of course, in the PICO simulation, you would add all the Italian, French, German requirements, and if they are not in the final PICO scoping response from the JCA, you have to expect that they could come from the local authorities later.
Is like some companies already anticipating that, or there is no, or any member states are willing to share that? For example, Belgium is willing to share that.
Sweden, TLV as well.
So they're willing to share that what has been included from their side, and not only after it's consolidated, But then it also means if they're sharing it, that means there would be expectation to add those analyses. And that's an extra amount of work for companies.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean?
As a pharma company, you have to be prepared for that. But at the moment, there is no experience because there is no real case which was going through the whole procedure.
Okay, so there's no, I mean, more I was asking for like what you have a hint maybe from the market, working with different companies.
Still very early on, so I think we only have, one, maybe two have really come to that stage already. So it's very early in the process still. Maybe in a couple of months, we'll see a bit more of that.
And the HTA bodies which are ready to disclose this, for them it's not that early. They're happy to disclose after PICO consolidation. And EU level, they're happy to disclose what's not included in to their country counterparts.
The majority is
Majority-
not ready. Is
Yeah,
not ready
but
to disclose.
some of them are ready to disclose, and then they would expect that. So I'm just thinking that if you have heard anything from your member companies.
No, not so far. And I mean, this is what, 3 out of 28, right, that are willing to do that. So it's still, you still have to prepare for all of those different additional comparators. Probably you will have to rely on your own expectations on what could come. So comparing your PICO simulation to what is coming out of the actual PICOs as well. Do you want to talk more about the Delta dossier? Okay. So good question. If there's any other questions or comments, feel free to come in. Maybe one thing as well, which we reflected on. So I think one of the main, let's say, takeaways from all of this is that, of course, this has led to access teams within the companies becoming a lot more important, because I mean now this is happening in parallel with the regulatory approval. You're dealing with all of the member states at the same time, whereas you previously would have done this in a stepwise approach, depending on which countries you want to go to first. So of course that comes with a lot more upfront costs as well, upfront budget, but it also means that you now, as the market access function, is maybe finally becoming seen as more important and having a bit more of a stronger voice there vis-a-vis the regulatory function. Another thing that we saw as well as one of the key takeaways is that throughout the procedure, of course, when it comes to the PICOs, when it comes to addressing the certainty of the results, etc., it's quite limited, the role of the companies. You don't really have as many opportunities to weigh in, to provide your substantial comments into the procedure. You're limited to this scope explanation meeting, where really it's after the scope has already been fixed for the assessment, for the factual accuracy check, which is coming later in, where you're providing comments on the draft report. You're only providing a factual accuracy check, so saying you're missing a comma there, or this number is wrong. So it's not really substantial. But it will, for the first time, really involve experts throughout the year. So in countries that do not have this experience throughout the procedure, and experts will be weighing in. They will be asked in all cases to provide input on the draft scope, so the comparators for the assessment, the populations, and they will also be providing substantial comments on the JCA report. And that's really something to be aware of, to be leveraged, to make sure that the right experts are there, to know the conflict of interest rules, of course, to be aware of them, the 3-year cooling off period, in which cases experts cannot be involved when you have worked with them previously as a company, and what derogation or exemptions there are to this rule, because there's some exemptions as well in for example, keeping in mind rare diseases where there might be a smaller number of experts overall. And I think this role is becoming very important in the procedure. And now we have time for maybe people to react to our overall the discussions we've had. I think you have something already.
I just have a comment, not a question for you. I think I already asked you a big question. It's just that medical societies were from beginning, less involved in this. Are you seeing any improvement at EU level? Because I think they kind of, ESMO was trying to be into that and was not there, and there was lots of back and forth. So what's your thought?
Yeah, I think that's a very important medical organization which is not part of the HTA network. I'm not sure if in the beginning they really tried to be part of that, or if they thought it's maybe not so important because we have our own rules, and so we have connections to some of them. And so there's also an internal discussion in ESMO how to best participate. And then I think you have also some insights from the latest application that they missed.
Yeah, so there was a new round of applications open up for additional members to the HTA stakeholder network, and of course the HTA stakeholder network is where the European Commission will be turning for nominations of experts to be involved. So it's quite important to be a part of this, and ESMA was missing from this stakeholder network, is what you were alluding to, and so they had actually applied in that second round, but they were not accepted due to technical rule which says that they have to be based in the EU and their office is in Switzerland. So that's quite challenging. However, I will say, I mean, we are in discussions with patient association. So UCOP is also a member of the stakeholder network, which is a role that we take quite seriously. We've been providing input to the procedures, the guidance documents, everything on behalf of our members. And one of the things that we want to make sure is that this part here, where the experts are involved, actually works well, so that you avoid cases where clinicians are not involved for such silly reasons that maybe the association is not there. But of course, you want a medical oncologist to weigh in on who would be the right expert for an oncology product. So we're still working with the patient associations, the clinical associations that are in the stakeholder network, and think they are all very much interested in also having, allowing ESMA to also put forward experts. So you can expect a bit more on that soon. We're currently in the discussions with them to figure out what's the right framework for working together, for providing those experts. Also, as for companies who have been working with these experts, all of a sudden, from this year, there's a 3-year cooling off period. So what do you do in those next 3 years? Are all experts burned from participating in JCA, and should all those JCAs suffer because those experts now have conflicts of interest, so they cannot be involved? So we have to involve other people that have less, let's say, of an expertise in the area. I mean, these are important questions which will impact on the quality of the assessments, and which have to be dealt with in this setting.
Yeah, maybe to add what we also then said before, this kind of importance of market access team to be involved early isn't the same way with the medical organization or maybe regulatory when you are working with KOLs, which could be, or patient organization, which could be afterwards a very important contributor, especially for ATMPs or so, where you don't have a lot of experts around maybe, and therefore this cross-functional collaboration early in the process, which includes not only the JCA, of course, and the preparation 2 years in advance, what we mentioned before, but also includes the opportunity to participate in JSC, the Joint Scientific Consultation, where you then get first information, what kind of evidence would be requested, what are good clinical trial designs, as you know it from GBA, ASHA-S, early advice consultations. So that's an important piece where market access is becoming more important in every organization.
What would be your advice to an organization to do this, to be efficient in this? I see it's in your key takeaways, system should be early on in the discussion, which often, often like medical or commercial counterparts of us, they forget that. They only realize that, now we have to get through this reimbursement.
Yeah.
Reimbursement hurdle, and now let's ask for access to it. So.
Yeah. No, a very good question, and it really depends on the people in the organization, how it's structured. But from my experience in Novartis, we were quite, I think, supportive in this direction. I was happy about getting this support. We implemented a so-called Access Medical Early Input Team. And this collaboration between access and medical, and I was on the same level reporting to the President of Europe for this function. For Europe, of course, we are talking about Europe here. This team was involved in assessing already the results after phase 1, phase 2 clinical trials, and say, okay, what kind of clinical trial design do we need in a phase 3? This was before JCA, of course, but for example, for AMNOG or other bigger countries, because many companies are focusing, clinical and research departments focusing on the US. This is the comparator, this is the clinical trial. To explain also, and that's one of my recommendations, that Europe is a one market here, and then say, okay, you have to do for Italy this, and for UK that, and for Germany this, then many research teams say, okay, this is too much. We cannot do 5 different trials for Europe. But if you find a trial design which is satisfying, I would say Germany, and then most of the other countries can be built into that. This Access Medical Input Team, early input team, can help a lot and connect it with the financial team, with the CFO, because the CFO need to do forecast, which is price-volume relationship. How many patients do you reach for what kind of price in what kind of time? And if you tell them your 1 billion blockbuster drug will collapse in Europe to 50 million because you cannot achieve a certain price, or based on the label you don't have the evidence, then that will give you more attention, I would say, around that.
And maybe just to add to that, I mean that JCA, it's mandatory, so you have to go through it, and it's triggered very early on at the same time as you file for marketing authorization approval to the EMA. And the JCA report will be available, was it 30 days latest, after the European Commission grants the marketing authorization. So that means that this JCA report, which is a common assessment of how how certain are we of the claimed clinical efficacy of the product for all of Europe, is going to be read not just by all of Europe, it's also going to be available quite early on to the rest of the world as well. Now that's something that you're probably not necessarily always thinking about when we're talking about JCA, but I think that's going to be resonate as well. To maybe it's important to hear that within the rest of the company as well, that this report that you cannot really escape if you're launching in Europe has a potential wider implications as well, and you want to prepare for it in the best way.
Maybe one good point I see from GCA is also that all the small countries in Europe are getting attention, you know. It's not, I mean, even if you know at GCA level Germany is still driving force, like now you cannot ignore like what like small country is asking. Yeah, so it's also for company, it's kind of like, for the global organization, it's more like bringing everyone in the same seat, kind of, because there are, you know, prioritizations of the markets, etc., and it's kind of changing it already. So.
Fully agree, and I think that's one of the political drivers from the European Commission, this inequality that patients in Hungary, Bulgaria don't have the same access than maybe in Germany and other countries, and that smaller countries are participating that early in the process because they are sitting in this coordination group, quality, blah, blah, so I forgot this name, and assess the final report. And they're already now in the first 9 products are allocated as assessor and co-assessor. So there is Hungary, there is Poland, there is Slovenia, I think, Austria, if you talk about Western European, that was Central Eastern, Western European, you have Belgium, you have Ireland twice already. So that's a nice distribution. Also NOMA, I mean, which is not an EU country, but they are adjacent to that one. So it's more this harmonistic, we are Europe, which sends a strong signal also to US companies or US focused companies, because suddenly it's not only Germany or France or UK where you want to launch, but you want to launch or should envision it as Europe. 500 million people, many patients.
Maybe we end on the, just leave time for the others as well. Maybe we do like a show of hands or something. Are you ready for the new procedures? Are you ready for JCA? Anyone is completely prepared? Hands up, ready? Let's say, who feels that they're not prepared enough? Okay, good, yes. It's a safe space here. So yeah, I think there's still some uncertainty, of course, to prepare for. You cannot deal with everything, but absolutely read your guidance, know your guidance, prepare for those things that you cannot escape. There's no way around it. The first comers take on more risk, but there's not much you can do about it if you're first eater. There's no way around it.
Maybe also to add finally, it's not only the companies which are maybe not super prepared or sort of smaller, even less than the bigger ones, which are involved maybe since Joint Action 3 and all this kind of stuff. Also, the country authorities are not really prepared. IFA have just announced a few months ago the new team which will take care. In HRS, we have specific teams which are involved in that. So I think smaller countries, anyhow, there will be a steep learning curve for all of us. And to end it with a positive note, I think it's a great opportunity. And if we support to leverage this opportunity more than criticizing what all can go wrong and what is not perfect and things like that, then finally, hopefully, innovative products will reach patients faster. That would be, I think, our goal and European Commission goal as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're 1 hour in advance, or?
Oh, wow. Good job.
So I have taken notes on the World Coffee on patient involvement, and there is really a few key messages to give to patient engagement. And the first one is really the fact that we really need to be educated and to educate the patient to be sure that they understand our reality as pharma company. To be sure that they are not unrealistic expectation, they understand the journey, and when they are integrated early in the development, they need to know that it will take times, and we need to put in place maybe some market access program for patients that are helping the pharmaceutical company. We also need to educate the team to the opportunity to work with a patient early, to really understand that we work for the patient and that patient could give really good information for the development, for clinical trial development, but also to understand that sometimes it's difficult or boring for patient to go 3, 4, 5 times to answer to a general quality of life scale and say, okay, I do that 3 times, the 4 I don't go, I drop out of the study because I don't understand why I need to do that. We also discuss a lot about the guidance which are there. They start to be there, but they are missing. We think. We discuss about the fact that guidance are missing. There is some very useful framework from EPATI organization, but more guidance are a requirement. Another point that was discussed is the fact that even if patient voice is included in GCA, there is no patient voice at country level, and maybe we need to develop and continue to include patient and maybe include patient as country level, because we include patient in consultation, but sometimes we don't really consider the opinion of patient. And maybe it will be the next step of patient involvement to involve really patient at the country level. It was all we discussed in the coffee.
Do you want to go first? Are you still okay? Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to keep it short, I hope. So I'm sticking to 3 points. So it was really about the challenges that are occurring, I think, in reimbursement processes and dossiers. So I think just like with the European HTA, challenges will always pop up because there is no budget. Maybe it's too expensive versus the value it brings. That's, of course, what governments are thinking. Or they're saying there are too much uncertainties and they want to have more certainty, especially when the patient population is different than in your country. Second, so
there will be continuous changes in HTA systems. I think this is one of them already, but also, of course, in local situation. And it's, of course, to control level playing field. I think that's always a very important one. I do not always agree with how they want to try to get that in order, but yeah, that is one of the reasons. And they really, the HTA body really want to have objective input. It's not always easy and it's not always working. I think the idea is very nice, but I also think their objective evaluation is not really objective. But anyway, 3, and I think that comes very close to this one. You need to be, as market access, also on a local country, become much more thoroughly prepared. So you need to know what data is available, what patients are there, what subgroups are there, is the data in the trials, can we work with it, or do we need to try to get this from other sources, where can we get it from? And of course, the positioning needs to be coming from the physician. So you need to try to get into contact with the profession as soon as possible and try to take them along the way, and all the questions that you have or the HTA body is going to have, to try to also get them in understand what is going on and to see whether they really want a product on the market and how they can support you with that. So just very simple.
So I'm group number 5, representing here. And I was meant to speak about performance-based models, but anyways, I took the question here, and it's all about indication-based price models. And we have found a lot of challenges, as you see here. So I'm not summarizing the challenges, but jumping to the key takeaways and give you some background why we found these as key takeaways. So first, when you speak about indication-based pricing or indication-based pricing models, then number 1, key takeaway, use different brands for different indication. That will solve a lot of problems and a lot of challenges over here. For example, the IRP. IRP is one thing. If you have different indications, different prices, how are you doing with IRP? So international reference pricing, for those who don't know the abbreviation. Also, indication, what does it mean? Is it an indication for several products, or is it a drug for a certain indication? What does indication specific mean? You solve it with brand. Yes. Then key takeaway number 2, early engagement with stakeholders. So that includes HCPs, patient engagement, or patient association groups, politicians, HTA bodies, all the different stakeholders that are involved in the whole process. Early engagement, we found also some challenges with early engagement, specifically now with the GCA, and that was also mentioned with group number 2. There can be now, with these new processes, some kind of resource challenge, because it's earlier, all the timelines are getting a little bit earlier. It's early activation of all these resources, so that's a challenge. It's not going to be solved with that. Even it makes it not better, let's call it like that. So early engagement, and it goes a bit together with number 3 takeaway. Have the data ready, and we just heard that from Henriette. The data is key. You have to have the right data. You have to have it ready. And we have spent a lot of time here about value discussion, and that we need to really explain value. What is value? What is benefit? For how long is the benefit going to be a benefit? Is it after 1 year it's finished, or will it increase? So a lot of explanations needed from our side, from pharma side, for the different stakeholders, I think, when it comes to benefit. And to explain, you need to have the data, and you need to be clear and concise on all these points.
I just want to add something about the different brand names. that works. I think everybody can hear me, but okay. The different brand name strategy works on the list price, right? When you have drugs like Ozempic, Wegovy, and they have completely different indications. If you're Keytruda and you have 11 oncology indications, that doesn't work, right? The only option is to work on the net pricing with the payers, but you would have just one brand and one list price.
I fully confirm. We tried for Ilaris, for example, which had different kind of indications in pipeline, oncology, cardiovascular risk reduction, which is a huge population, versus rare disease, rheumatoid disease, CAPS, and so on. And we discussed with many authorities, can we do this indication-specific pricing, and how can we succeed with that? Was not possible in any of these countries. So it's important, if you have several indications, that you sequence them beforehand, and therefore pharma industry in many cases started with a rare disease product, start with a higher price for lower patient numbers, and then have this starting. Because the other way around usually doesn't work, to increase prices too much. It's sometimes possible, but not very much.
I've seen that a lot. Like you start 4th line or 11th line of therapy, and then you climb up to 1st line.
Who's number 6?
But if anyone wants to speak anything, it's a free space, as you say.
Sure.
An extra presentation.
Extra presentation.
I think this outcome-based commercial models, which came up in several discussions throughout the 2 days, are something which I think as an industry we should spend more time. And I remember in the Netherlands when we started to implement something like Solidarity. It worked for 2-3 years, and then it was becoming too bureaucratic for the physicians to document. And so the physicians said, we don't want to do this anymore.
They actually did not do it.
And well, they didn't do it, not as much as they should. And then we went from outcome-based agreement into straight discount, because we had so much information that 12% of patients would not be in. So therefore 12% discount makes this whole thing easier. But in general, I think society is not willing to pay for the drugs like they do today. In 10 years, I would expect that the pharma industry has to improve outcomes, to measure outcomes. Then it will be easier, because with all the evidence, artificial intelligence, data lake usage. So I'm not sure how you think about that.
I mean, that was quite a realization. WeCONECT has been working with this WHO Europe Novel Medicines platform. It's been established by Norwegian authorities, which has been kicking this off. We started with the Oslo Medicines Initiative, seeing exactly these challenges of higher price, innovative products that comes with a high initial price tag, and also a high degree of uncertainty. It's been like a long-running policy dialogue, really, to try to identify what are the right policy options to do with that. And one of the around the table, you have pharmaceutical industry, you have FDA representing larger companies, Europe representing smaller companies. You have the HTA bodies, payers participating as well. One of the things that was established was, let's say, this project looking into how to sort of principles for managed entry agreements. And it's nice that it's leading this work. And from our member that's been a part of that discussion is that one of the first things that they sort of identified when they were meeting Manchester was that basically on the payer side and on the company side, both really agree that no one wants a very complex payment model if you do with a single.
Yeah. So, and that complex model back because they think it's just complex to track, just for tracking the report business. But you also made a very nice point that with AI coming and maybe it will be easier to track such things. And internally I know like market access colleagues, if you go and tell them that let's negotiate for outcome-based agreements, they're not happy because who will track? And it will be, and they don't want to put themselves in that risk that they are liable for different than what forecasting did in financial business case, right? So I think it's a huge opportunity with AI again coming in this space and maybe the tracking would be. But so if I understand you correct, is it true that WHO will support such policy or no? I mean.
They're just a convener.
Okay.
So they're just making this, which is a very brave thing to do in itself,
Yeah.
because to let in and a lot of different stakeholders with different views, like associations, clinicians, etc., is also involved in this. And it's something that we as a pharmaceutical industry have been asking for a long time, because everyone sees that there is an issue, there is limited budgets available, there is issues with finding certainty and providing the necessary evidence, etc., that decision makers need. Everyone has a shared interest in solving this, but then can we come together and discuss what is the right way forward? Certainly, outcome-based payment models plays a role there. I think that another thing that we are looking at very closely is the European health data space, which is not very concrete. There will be implementing acts coming out next year, which I recommend everyone to really get your colleagues involved into the trade associations to provide the right input on those implementing acts. To make sure that this actually can work for its purpose, which is to have that data be available to make HTA decisions, pricing and reimbursement decisions, and it's a wide range of data that will be available. It's genomic data, it's claims data, it's health insurance data, it's hospital data, it's data from apps, from wearables. It's really future looking. But there is, of course, the risk that member states do, as they did with genomics data, saying that rather than having an opt-out model, which is the only way that this will actually work, we would reach that critical level of lots of data that you need to actually have to be able to talk about the European health data space. But they have opted in instead for an opt-in model, where member states can have stricter measurements in place, which would then really limit the functionality of the system. So now is a very critical time for us to actually be involved in that policy space to make sure that that system that we're building actually meets that aim that the legislators have. And this all comes down to how the member states will implement it.
I want to share, there's a guy named Neil Grubert. I follow him on LinkedIn. He's very useful.
He's access expert.
Yeah.
He has been in the field for a while.
Oh yeah, if you don't follow him, find him. Neil Grubert. He's based in Germany.
No, he's British.
Oh, okay.
He was on a panel with us some time ago, and he's an expert which is publishing nicely latest. It's AI analytics, which we're doing there.
Yes.
Yeah. He will be with us on this festival.
I think he came to Canada last year, but I didn't cross paths with him.
Okay, I think at this point we can close the conference.